when the Hunt brothers did their, and it was up around 6.
The December 4th, 2023 Citizens Involvement Committee is called to order. Dennis, would you please call the roll?
December 4th, okay. Kanema, Dennis is here. Caulfield, Dan.
Here.
Elyville, Dee Dee is on Zoom. Dee Dee? Not answering, but she's there. She's there. Hillendale, Josh.
Here.
And Sarah.
Also here.
McLaughlin, Denise.
Here.
And Will.
Here.
Great. Park Place, Steve.
Here.
And Bob.
Here.
And that's our roster. We have Adam in the room, and we have Jerry Herrmann as a guest.
How about Emily?
And Emily is, she doesn't seem to be out there in the world.
Okay.
Show up, I bet.
They might be coming in late. That's where we are.
Okay. I'd like to start out by introducing our new city liaison, Hannah Schmidt. Hannah, would you like to give the rest of the committee a little rundown on your life?
Yeah, of course. I am Hannah Schmidt, and I'm the new Community Engagement Specialist for the City of Oregon City, and I will be happily serving as your new city liaison. I am originally from Oregon. I grew up near Mount Hood area. I went to Sandy High School, graduated from the University of Oregon with an environmental studies degree and a minor in public policy and ethics. And then I started my career out as an AmeriCorps Cape Cod member over in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. That's where I got into restoration work, environmental work. Then COVID happened, and I have been a seasonal ranger for the past 3 years prior to this experience, doing a lot of visitor service engagement, community outreach work, both with the Bureau of Land Management, working over at Wildwood locally, over in Welches, Oregon, and then I just finished up my last season with Fish and Wildlife Service over in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'm very happy to be home back to Oregon and very excited to be working with all of you.
And when I met Hannah a few weeks ago, I made a condition that she couldn't leave for a while. And she assured me that she plans to be around with us. So.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be home. So this is the job that got me the ticket home, so I plan on staying for a while.
And I appreciate you, Bob, making that a stipulation, because that helps me.
We're a pretty tough group to get along with, so.
Hasn't been too hard for me thus far, so we'll see.
Okay, our first presenter tonight will be Jerry Herrmann telling us about his firm, the Rivers of Life Center. And Jerry, I'd like to start by giving my $20 donation
Oh, my.
to you, your firm.
Well, thank you. I can eat tomorrow. Good. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for inviting me here. I was asked to talk about Rivers of Life Center. It's not Rivers of Death, it's Rivers of Life. That's a different group, okay? Rivers of Life Center, the slides that you'll see before you, and up there, thank you so much for your help over there.
Of course.
Rivers of Life Center was founded about 20 years ago and became involved 30 years ago when it was really part of the Environmental Learning Center, okay? The Environmental Learning Center is at Clackamas Community College. I heard an environmental voice over there. Up there at the Environmental Learning Center, I didn't know nothing back in 1974. That tells you I'm old. Old as dirt. John Williams would tell me, I had a lot of respect for John, and I work with the dirt. So I said, John, say what you want. I work with the dirt. Anyway, up at the Environmental Learning Center, it became clear that taking a former industrial site and making it into something, which is what we were asked to do as students, was going to be a challenge, but I really look forward to that with the other people. We brought hundreds and hundreds of people in there from the community over the years, and that, if you've been up there, is the result of literally thousands of people working up there over the years. I'm back up there helping them with youth work and such. And Rivers of Life Center, I'm going to go through this real quickly. You have a couple handouts with you. You've got a brochure, which describes who we are. Then you have a solicitation. I'm looking for young people. young people, youth, young adults and youth ages 14 through 24, 25 is fine too, as our primary group. The brochure that is the next thing on that slide up there tells you about what we do. Generally, our mission is to work with young people and give them an opportunity to look at careers and sample careers and meet with professionals that would have a chance to educate them as to what is possible in their lives, working with the environment. The other part, though, at the Environmental Learning Center was we have all these guests coming up here called visitors. What are we going to do with these visitors? And we had to figure out how to become a tourism site. We were the first tourism site in Clackamas County and held the first workshops on tourism up there. I know your city's involved in tourism. We had to figure it out back then. And the first thing is be hospitable to people, encourage them, and more than that, be able to present information. So I'm wearing a badge tonight that says hospitality begins here, encourage one another. That's what every one of my youth must know, that idea, boys and girls and others. Okay, the career sampling piece, once you take this and think about a young person in your family or extended family that might want to work for us, we pay, according to the state laws, the wages required for young people. And we are certified by the state of Oregon. Oregon Higher Education Coordinating Council supports our work, and we're specifically the site for Clackamas County, along with one other site for the Oregon Youth Corps. So you take a look at what this is about, chances to meet with architects, engineers, designers, some of your staff in the city. I'm going to involve them from time to time because they're excellent. Your planners and such, your engineer, John Lewis and others, okay? We're going to take them to Aurora Airport because the discipline of flying means you got to fly. You don't crash. That's the point. And the discipline of flying means we're going to take them on discovery flights with the cadets that are out there of the airborne cadet program. The Oregon Youth Conservation Corps supports this whole idea of involving them in technical training, even like that. Discovery flights. What does it mean to fly an airplane? To have a chance to do that. What does it mean to be an assistant pilot of Willamette jet boats? What does it mean to be an onboard guide with the Portland Spirit? So the two things that we primarily do, we're going to go to that third slide, which is really dark. I don't know where you are on the queuing here, but I'm up to this one now. The dark black one here.
Okay.
We're not.
Okay. What we're, yeah, the next one after that should be the dark one. After
Okay.
that. Okay. Everything we do, we're trying to give people a museum experience. And you're going to say a museum. That's where you go through exhibits. Well, yes, but you can also go through outdoor exhibits and learn well from them too. We have built the exhibits at the end of the Oregon Trail that are outdoor exhibits, worked with them down there for some time. At the Environmental Learning Center, they were going crazy. The college, you're working with the plastic industry. Why are you doing that? Because plastics need to be recycled. And at one time, the greatest collection of plastic lumber things was up there. Now we're moving it to a different site because they don't quite know how it relates to their mission. Well, I think it still relates to their mission. We're developing a new site up on Mount Scott called the Mount Scott Headwaters and Environmental Center for Built Environments. And in all cases, the idea of combining technologies for people and wildlife, the Northwest Wildlife and Technology Museum, we think of these things, the projects we work on, well, whatever they are, including some of the things we do in your city, is there's an opportunity for some education. How can we make that work in a particular site? There's a list here of sites, of projects. I think that's this thing here. Projects. Let me just give you a sample. Environmental Learning Center was where I learned payroll comes every 2 weeks and you better have the money or you're going to jail. Secondly, I learned that if you're going to involve corrections people and all sorts of diverse volunteers, along with corrections people, you better know how to work with people. So I had to learn that skill and have all the young people that work for me and others figure out how to do that. Environmental Learning Center we built many years ago. It took 20-some years to build that thing. Now it's in the hands of the college. They're doing a great job with their educational programming. And we're developing now the Mount Scott Headwaters Environmental Center for Built Environments. We're developing that. I'll tell you more about that. We've worked on Clackamas Park. We've worked on both museums, Museum of the Oregon Territory, end of the Oregon Trail, the Governor Holmes House here a year ago and such, and we're happy to help in any of these museum areas because we think they're a good place to learn two things, at least two things: how to build a better environment, then how to work with people and not get in their way if they're guests, then go experience their exhibits and learn from what is going on in those exhibits. And the Museum of the Oregon Territory has an incredible history of industrial economy development and settlement of this area. Into the Oregon Trail tells a story of us as settlers, not myself, but our predecessors coming here and what they did to settle this region. In addition to that, we worked on projects at Clackamas Park and Clackamas Cove. I've had a passion for Clackamas Cove for some time. A long time ago when it was dug out by Jack Parker. You might have heard that name before, Parker, Northwest, Sand and Gravel and such. I heard that they were going to be basically turning it into a ship channel. I thought, well, how are you going to do that? A lot of dredging occurred when I was younger, and a channel 15 feet deep went from the mouth of the Clackamas River all the way into Clackamas Cove. The Cove Gravels built I-205, if you didn't know that. And the batch plants for asphalt, and especially concrete built the Glenn Jackson Bridge. Most of I-205 came out of that hole in the ground. The question is, what do you do with the hole in the ground when you're done with it? So we've been trying to advocate for water quality and other issues that could be used there. We went to the city in 2016, Rivers of Life Center, and talked about mitigation funding, which I'm going to talk a little more about that. And I came to you folks about that too, and got your endorsement about a year and a half ago. And PRAC, Park Recreation Advisory Committee, how can people's money that was set aside in downtown Portland because they created a mess, including the Port of Portland and other industrial users, they had to pay into a fund to clean up their mess. Guess what? Once they cleaned up their mess, sometimes they couldn't use their land as well for their industrial purposes. So they set a huge amount of it, $500 million aside, to help support other projects upriver, all the way to the so-called designated end, and that's Willamette Falls. So Gladstone, Westland, Lake Oswego, Milwaukee now are all recipients of some of that money. And I think it's time for us to be able to use that too. Our projects also include a number of walking tours and other things that we do. Next picture, kind of out of focus, some pictures of some workers doing some work, sorry about that. But they're doing work at Clackamas Cove. We're still down there keeping that area cleaned up, at least on the west side. There are no homeless down there. I don't want to tell you what I do with the homeless, but I will tell you we employ them and put them to work. That's what we want to do with them. Make them part of keeping the area clean, and they do that. The next picture, which is, there you go, thank you so much, shows some natural area work we're doing with one of our young people, but below it, we've developed a relationship with the Grand Ron Youth Corps. They have a youth corps like we do, but it's down in a different county, of course, Lincoln County. And their youth work with our youth on some projects. We hope to continue that relationship. Native Americans, of course, owned this land long before we decided we were going to own it or inherit it. And we think that their young people and ours working together is a nice diversity, equity, inclusion kind of idea. Now, let's talk about tourism. You're going to say, what is he doing to us? What does this have to do with tourism? Well, you know what? When the native folk lived around here, this was food 101. When an 800 to 1,200 pound animal showed up at Willamette Falls and hadn't been eaten by sharks or killer whales, because those are the primary predators then, not so many abundant anymore, these people were seen as a real asset. We see them as a problem because they're eating fish. Absolutely, they are. But seeing seals and sea lions has been an interesting thing, and a number of years ago, we brought the Portland Spirit to Oregon City in 2015-16 for a number of tours with some funding from the Oregon City Civic Improvement Trust. We tested the idea. Next picture, trying to keep this thing moving, shows some of the things that we did. Let's see, it's this one here. Maybe I got it wrong here. Let me see. I screwed up. No, you're right. Okay, this one. Okay, I was correct. You were correct. All right. We brought the Portland Spirit here because we wanted to see, can Portland be a destination, the Portland Spirit, for vessel tours? You've got the biggest dock in Oregon. Did you know that? In Oregon City, the biggest dock, commercial dock, on the Columbia-Willamette system, built with Marine Board and Fish and Wildlife funds and other funds, has been there now, not being used much, I'll tell you. It's unfortunate. That dock could host, and did host, the Portland Spirit when it came in 2015-16. A couple thousand people came on discovery tours, and our job was to educate 12 to 14 young people to be 2 at a time presenters on the Portland Spirit vessel as it left by OMSI, Portland Harbor, to come up to the dock I just talked about at Johnston Park, while a bus simultaneously left Portland with 4 guides on board, young people, that would tell them about the route they were on. Did you know McLaughlin Boulevard, should we say it, Highway 99E, is the first intercontinental highway between 2 nations, Mexico and Canada. That whole story of how it came together and how Greyhound, the idea of bus line getting going in this area around Clackamas, to be honest with you, and having dogs chase it, thinking they could develop a bus route on it, that's where Greyhound came from, that whole idea, all right? That's a story one wanted to tell, along with other stories about Milwaukee, the port of Milwaukee, Oswego across the river as you came up on Highway 99E, Gladstone, to look like merry old England, at least with the streets. Ever look at the streets there? Arlington, Berkeley, Clarendon, Exeter, Fairfield, they're all names from England. Because the man that founded that city really was enamored with England. Now, it doesn't look like England, but at least they were trying to represent some of the aspects of England. So we wanted, when they got here to Oregon City, to take them on a bus tour, luxury buses now, not scrubby stuff, good stuff. The 2 museums I talked about, and if we could get a 3rd one involved because of time, we do that too, with their professional staff and our young people serving the guests to get them back on board and help them and so forth. And then to take them on an old home tour of the McLaughlin district. There's some wonderful old homes in Oregon City. They're not all up on top, then they're not all down here. The McLaughlin district has a great distribution. Then go down Washington Street and go into the flood zone. The floods around here, I want to tell you, we're not probably going to have a 1996 event because we don't have much snowpack now. But if we had a big snowpack right now, and what's going on right now with the heat and the atmosphere and all that, we would have a huge runoff event. The Clackamas River came up 15 feet today, 15 feet in 24 hours. That's a real quick rise. But we wanted to show them what the floods did to the area, which you now know as Corner 14, or Oregon City Brewing Company, or my favorite, Tony's Fish Market, which all those areas were underwater down there. Not completely, but greatly inundated. And we wanted them to know about what floods do in communities that are prone to floods. Then we took them to the End Oregon Trail by bus, where they went through all the exhibits there. This is all timed and choreographed. And at the same time, we went and got the people that came by vessel, got them off the 100-foot vessel, and then brought them over to the End Oregon Trail and reversed the whole thing. It was a very complicated thing, but it worked really well. Hopefully we can do that kind of thing again. I know the city's looking at a tourism program. Boy, do you have some assets here, not just old homes. That's wonderful. And heritage, that's wonderful. But the confluence of 2 rivers makes it really, really unique. We've done walking tours of the bluff. We call them No Bluffing, the Bluff Tour. Telling you about early geology, telling you about David Douglas, who was in this area, Douglas fir, Douglas spirea, Douglas hawthorn. Those are 3 of 500 plants that he named when he was in this region of Oregon working with Dr. McLaughlin. David Douglas was a scientist. McLaughlin was the administrator, trying to keep things together for his company, the Hudson Bay Company. Here came this British man to discuss the falls and all the things he saw here, David Douglas. We also have taken them on Tale of 2 Rivers tours. You've got 2 rivers that come together and a few smaller streams. You have the Clackamas and the Willamette, as the Indians called it, meaning river of life, Willamette, and gathering place for our people. There were things that happened off of Clackamas Park. Most of you probably are not aware of it, including a huge pandemic that was introduced in 1829 where huge populations of Native people died, unfortunately. Deliberately was introduced to be able to take over Willamette Falls. Well, we tell that story carefully. When we started that research, I worked with the Grand Ron and they said, please don't talk about that too much. I said, tell me what I should say. They said, well, we're not sure. I said, bring your historian to be part of our event, and that's what we did. So, Tale of 2 Rivers is a story of 2 battling rivers. The Clunkamus, named for the rolling sounds of rock clunking together as they're doing today. Right now, they're doing that. If you go down by the river at Clackamas Park, you can hear the rocks moving right now because of the flow, flowing real fast right now. And the Willamette, they came together, formed a huge navigation obstruction there. Fast water, shallow water, rapids, that happened all there. The worst part of the navigation on the Columbia Willamette system is right in front of us at Clackamas Park. Here's the picture that we'll go to now, which shows you some of the tours we've done. Willamette Falls tour, as we work, of course, at the Environmental Learning Center with some of their programming and such. But we did over 100 tours when I was developing the Environmental Learning Center on rivers. I love rivers. And the only way to experience a river and know about its history, its wildlife, its economic development. Those are three things that people should know. Why did people settle here? Why are the mills here in Oregon City? What was the reasoning for that? What was the economic factors that allowed Oregon City and West Lynn City, as it was then called, to be at the falls? We go through those subjects on tours that went all the way up to Champoeg, Newburgh, and all the way down to the Columbia, about 40 miles below where we sit right now, 100 miles down the Columbia to Astoria, or 100 miles upriver to Hood River. Those are routes that we pioneered over time, and we're training young people to continue that idea. Since I'm old as dirt, I want younger people to be involved in these programs, so I'm training these guides, young people, to present some of the information that I've done for you tonight. Gary Spanovich is presenting tomorrow night. The Two Rivers Neighborhood Association does exist. Brian Boyce died, the vice president. We're replacing him tomorrow night. Brian was a great man, helped me a lot with nature programs and such. Gary Spanovich is presenting the master plan for for Sportcraft Landing and Marina tomorrow night. And I think you'll be interested in what's going on. Come down if you can. It's open to anybody. We'll have cookies and other goodies there. It's at River Shore Hotel. Right below the dining room is a community room. That's where we meet. The Two Rivers Neighborhood Association's district is from the Metro South Transfer Station up to the falls. So obviously there's some potential here. Gary knows President Carter and, of course, Roslyn, who just died, personally, because he started the Carter Peace Initiative for Clackamas County. Gary works with our youth to try to train them about peaceful ways to involve themselves, kind of the way the natives did from time to time, a different approach, and he helps us with our outdoor tours and explorations. Now, I don't know how many of you are on this tour. This was the Sternwheeler tour of 2010. 2010, we had 100 people on board, a vessel that was certified for 105, to be honest with you, owned by Captain Paul Simonis. Captain Paul's not here, he's up in Anacortes. The Rose Sternwheeler was used many times to help city programs here get them aware of it. On this episode, we had young County Commissioner Paul Savas on board. He was talking about his campaign. I was the narrator, kind of like I'm doing now. My job to keep people happy. We went up the Clackamas River and into Clackamas Cove because the river was backed up the Clackamas by the Willamette, spring runoff. And so we get right in the cove, look around. On the way out, we ran into something and it caused the drive shaft on the stern wheel, power wheel, to break. And we were going down the river, kind of sideways. Captain Simonis, myself, and Paul got out there and tossed the anchor, 300-pound anchor, over the bow of the sternwheeler, and finally began to straighten out off of Melville Bar Park. And then Paul Savas went below decks with Captain Simonis and fixed the driveline. Simonis had already called the Coast Guard, which he's required to do by law. You'll see people in here, I think you know. Karen Morey's pictures in here and others. Long and short of it is, it was kind of a fun event because my job was, don't get them panicked, Jerry, everything's fine. I said, yes, I will. But you're don your life jackets now, be ready for the Coast Guard in case they come. Here comes the Coast Guard an hour later, and was so happy to see everybody in life jackets. And within an hour and a half, Captain Simonis and Paul Savas emerged. Paul had a suit on, full of grease now, wiped himself off, put his coat back on, and we completed the trip. That's Paul Savas, county commissioner now. So that was a really neat trip. We've had ones that didn't have incidents too, I want you to know that. Not all of them had things like that. Last but not least, some of the things that we're doing, community things that have to do with this city and others. I feel very strongly that this city staff needs help from time to time, and that's the role of us, our leadership, and our youth. We have formed several groups to try to help them. And they're listed here. One is the Natural Resource Overlay District Task Force. I just said a mouthful, Natural Resource Overlay District. What in the world is that? It's where you're supposed to be careful around the environment, streams, creeks, whatever, wetlands, and you're supposed to build carefully and all that. People, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Well, it's not as bad as you think if you understand it. It isn't understandable. We formed a task force to make it more clear. It's about the built environment. The built environment, landfill project, if it should come back or doesn't come back, there are built environments all the time that need to simultaneously come along with construction. Why can't people understand how they can be done more efficiently and effectively? So we formed that task force with the planning director and her staff, and we've done a number of things working together jointly on a project called Trillium HOA. Down by Lima Falls Hospital is a Trillium Neighborhood Association, or HOA there. They want to develop an area of about 10 acres or less for area use along Mill Creek Canyon. It has to be done right. So as a result of that Natural Resource Overlay District tour, we stopped there and looked at that, and we're taking on that project now to try to work with them. Thursday, if you're still able to go, Bob, we're wondering what's going on with planning. And Aquila, your planner, and I've had this talk, is local control going away? He said, I don't know how to answer that, but I'm worried. I said, I'm sensing from planning commissioners and others that it's going away. And she said, I think you're right. I said, in the spirit of Tom McCall, and our youth are trained to present the story of Tom McCall, the best darn governor you'll ever recall, and his name was Tom McCall. He wanted the community involved locally to make decisions about what's going on. So Thursday morning, myself, Doug Neely, and Bob, hope you still come, and any of you are welcome to come. Quilla, we have to have people meet her at 9 a.m. at the planning office, and we're going to discuss what can we do to reinvigorate the story of Tom McCall and what he cared about, and get this local control thing working again. Okay, so a few of the other projects mentioned here, I mentioned Clackamas Cove. I'm not going to quit on Clackamas Cove. I see a lot of potential there. The water quality, as you've heard, is the problem. How do we make that work better? In 2015, there was a permit in place. They called it a dredging permit. I said, don't call it that. Call it a channel maintenance permit. Well, the Corps of Engineers calls it a dredging permit. I said, it's going to send the wrong signal. There's still some things that can be done with that, possibly, even though that permit has lapsed, it could be reinvigorated. But the cove is too good to ignore. It's one of the most important assets in the North End district of this city, in my opinion, and others' opinion. Clackamas Park, you had people come and testify to you about their master plan. And when I looked at the master plan with other people looking at it, myself and others, the question was, where are you going to put the mitigation funding? And Kendall Reed and others, as many of you didn't know what it was, I've explained it to you. The mitigation funding could help Clackamas Park. Clackamas Park in that master plan has 8 acres out of 22 identified now as mitigation fundable land. That's 8 acres out of the total project that could be funded with probably $10 or more million to help create wildlife habitat, places for people, interpretive signage and things like that. That is not this community's money. It's money that still exists. There is a discussion out there that Gladstone, who had mitigation money going from Eldon Bar Park, almost 10 million to date, they've had to no longer receive it, or they're not receiving it. Well, they're not receiving it because they need to clean up some work that they had other contractors do that didn't quite follow the process the way it has to be to satisfy fish and wildlife people and so forth. That money's out there. That money's out there for this city if we want it. It's for Westland, it's for Milwaukee, it's for Lake Oswego, any of these communities that need to see some improvements that can be funded with outside resources. And I think it's a wonderful thing to not assume it's gone, keep pushing forward and go for it, especially at Clackamas Park. There's two rivers there, the Clackamas and the Willamette. There's 5,000 feet of frontage. That's 4 times the frontage around Clackamas Cove, which means you can do a lot of things on those 2 river frontages all the way up to John Storm Park. So before I end here, the brochure, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We receive gifts, of course, and we'd love to have a gift from you. We're working with a lot of foundations right now. The John Bray Foundation, ever heard of that? He's the one that invented Oregon Saw Chain. He was an environmental developer and industrialist that built Sun River, Skamania Lodge, Salish Island Coast, and John's Landing. We're trying to work with them now to come up with some project ideas and funding in addition to what we've been doing at Mount Scott. Love to have this group sometime come to a spring salmon bake at the Mount Scott Headwaters Environmental Center for Built Environment. Love to have you come up there sometime, and I'll try to set it up with your leadership if you'd allow me to do that. But consider a gift to us, it's tax deductible. And more than important than that, we're looking for workers. And we'll give them lots of opportunities, both about the environment and experiencing other career sampling as well. So if I can answer any questions, I've probably taken too much time, but be glad to answer any questions.
I have a question. Do you have a program with the college? The college? Clackamas College.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Does this Rivers of Life have a program at the college? Environmental studies or?
Yes, the environmental studies are done in the field. We're doing it with direct field involvement. They hear from myself and other biologists and others and architects. There's a number of architects that work with the youth to show them how the design that we've come up with is being implemented. Then they have a chance to build it. It's really the best way to learn, hands-on.
But in terms of a reach out to get young people involved, I would think the college would be a rather big source of people wanting to engage in the environment and be a part of this
I'm sorry, the next thing we got to work on is my hearing.
Okay, well, I'm just curious about the college.
Dennis, try to speak more into your mic.
Yeah, sorry, I'm fighting a cold. It would just seem, I thought I saw something here related to the college. In fact, I've been over to the college and I've seen the center that you worked on so long ago.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that connection still exists and whether that has been pursued on terms of like a program, reach out to students
To answer
who
your
might.
question, yes, thank you. Dr. Cook and I met several times. I really appreciate him as the president of the college. He's very interested in community networking and all that. And I told him what we're doing. I said, the first thing I don't want to do is cause any disruption to the programming at the Environmental Learning Center because that's where I learned all my stuff. And that's what I really care about. He said, no, you're talking about focusing on the built environment, aren't you? I said, yes, constructed environments with a golf course on one side, which we're working with to soften. It's called Eagles Landing Golf Course. And there's eagles there, by the way. And then next to it are beautiful condominiums and townhouses. So, and a wonderful community of Asian people, Cambodians, Vietnamese, and others. So our work up there is going to really show you the most current things you could do to integrate habitat into your home landscape, both native plants, I want to make this clear, and also ornamentals that support food, nesting, and other values for wildlife. It's going to be different than the Environmental Learning Center. But we're going to try, he said, can we work the programming together? I said, yes, I'd love to do that. They have a 300-seat auditorium up there called the Aries Event Center. Beautiful classroom kind of thing during the winter months in particular that we could use. So, to answer your question, we're trying to network the two ideas together. The Environmental Learning Center is where I learned all the stuff the hard way. And so now I can apply it, having learned it in a slightly different way, but its purpose is to support economic development and urbanizing areas. Okay, how do you make the environment serve the economy in a practical way? Mm-hmm. So that answer your question?
Yes.
I can think of at least 5 projects that Jerry has helped us with in Park Place alone.
Oh, I forgot to mention that. I'm very sorry. Park Place Park. and the whole leadership up there, excellent group of people up there. That project, for a long time, one of your members, Dorothy Dalsrud, nominated a forest up there. The Natural Resource Committee, I helped found the Natural Resource Committee many years ago, and all of a sudden, we were talking about forests because we felt some forests needed to be considered too, not individual trees for protection, but forested areas. She nominated Douglas Hawthorne Forest. I played David Douglas, so I feel pretty good about this. I play him as a character. Anyway, Douglas Hawthorne Forest with Douglas firs, western hemlock, cedar and so forth. There's an 800-foot trail coming up there now with the help of the Park Place Neighborhood Association and the Metro Enhancement Grant Program. And we're penetrating into the forest but not damaging it. And that should be done by May. That's our hope. A little bit behind on some things, but we're hoping to get that done with beautiful interpretive signage. You know, several thousand, shall I say 20,000 looks like the number, according to the End of the Oregon Trail people, came over Holcomb Hill to get to Abernathy Green. That was a major route from the Clackamas River over this last cinder cone called Holcomb Hill to come into the End of the Oregon Trail. We're going to tell the story of that cinder cone, the pioneers as they came over, the crater they had to go through up on top, which is still up there on top of Holcomb Hill, building a corduroy road around over a wetland and pond area because their wagons wouldn't make it over the ponds or wetland areas. We're going to tell that story in the interpretive signage up there as a part of Park Place Park. So that's, I'm sorry, I neglected to mention that. That's
Well, I was just saying that if you need help with something environmentally.
Yes, absolutely.
Jerry is excellent at writing grants. He has helped us get a grant for that park work that's being done and other things.
Well, this first phase
Does a
is to
great job.
develop 800 feet with some interpretive signage, and the other potential improvements include more educational signage and ultimately extending that thing, doubling that length over time, because that whole hillside is very beautiful, and it's a part of a cinder cone, a little volcano that's right there in the midst of our community that nobody understands. So yes, we would really like to have your support in any way.
Any other questions?
Dorothy has a question.
Go ahead, Dorothy.
What was that?
Dee Dee, go ahead.
Oh,
I think I'm unmuted, correct?
oh,
Yep.
Okay, I've had the hardest time. I'm in California. Jerry, I wish I was there to go with the meeting with you about the natural resources. We need so very hard to save all of those things. I'm very excited about the Park Place Park Nature Trail. There are several parks that you have addressed. One is the small little Abernathy Park.
Abernathy Park,
I think
we
I'm
worked
saying
on that
right.
for
The
the
little Abernathy Park where you did the hiking trail around that.
That was for the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council. We helped them put that in. It's beautiful. There's the plant materials. You helped with it too. You helped with
And
it too.
I think that we need to center on a lot more of our parks. I have at the end of this meeting would like to know about how many of our members want to support a climate action plan. What you're doing would help us with a climate action plan for our city. Because we currently do not have one. And it was,
Well, and Kendall Reed, you know, I really have a lot of sympathy for Kendall with 320 acres to deal with. And I don't know, 15 staff or something in all the departments that he oversees. We formed another group, I forgot to mention that, the Oregon City Parks Alliance of business people and other. It's now had 3 members, now it's got 10. Because we advocated with commissioners and others to increase the funding at least at a preliminary level to 3 staff, 2.5 were allocated to parks, which is an improvement that hasn't happened in a long time. We want to look at, with them, the Parks Alliance and our efforts together, Rivers of Life and other groups, the Parks Foundation, at a long-term funding, excise tax, park district, or some other method, because your treasures when it comes to a tourism destination are, of course, your heritage areas and your older homes, but the parks in this city are remarkable. Waterboard Park is the most amazing thing you've got going. It's slumping and going down the hill. Guess what it teaches? Geology in action. And Dr. Scott Burns, many of you know him, Professor Emeritus from Portland State University, he really wants to see that move forward as a significant natural area that the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries would help with. And the Parks Foundation that Dee Dee's a part of has done wonderful work. You probably heard of that in the past. Removing the ivy and other things like that. The road's slumped. We got to fix the road. No, leave it alone. Interpretive walkway that comes down the asphalt boardwalk that goes out and down in front of the slumped area. It's teaching the geology of Oregon City. There's very few places they can do that. Teach active geology. Sarah Hoover.
But Jerry, we'll have to.
Yeah, I'm talking too much. We'll take you on a tour.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you very much, Jerry.
You're welcome. Thanks for giving me the time.
You do a wonderful job, and don't forget my donation here.
Here's another one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, our next subject is CIC officer nominations. Now, years ago, the CIC used to have in the bylaws where they'd have nominations in November and then discussions in December and elections in January, I believe it was. Now everything's supposed to happen in January, but I wanted to take an opportunity to offer anybody who wanted to run for office, which our elections will be in February, to give us a little idea of why we should select them for a leadership position. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for anybody who wants to self-nominate or anybody that wants to nominate somebody.
I would like to nominate my partner in crime here, Josh Kazler. I'd like to tell a few, I haven't known him long, but my experience has all been very positive. He's extremely organized. He never misses meetings. He takes great notes. He comes early to everything. He's a tech genius. And he says he's willing to be president, or chair rather. And I think he'd make a great chair of this body. So I'd like to nominate Josh as chair.
Okay, thank you. And Josh, would you like to tell us why we should elect you?
Sure, thanks, Bob. So thank you, Sarah, appreciate that. I just believe in being part of a solution. We're kind of almost doing this backwards because we are also doing our autobiographies or whatnot as well. So it kind of mixes into that a little bit. But, I got the opportunity when I moved into Oregon City in 2016, or moved into the city of Oregon City in 2016, I should say. And living in Hallandale to start going to these neighborhood association meetings and start seeing what all these different people were doing. William Gifford being our land use chair. And I just see all these people, being involved for long periods of time. I'd see people like you, Bob, on different committees and things like that. And it just interested me in being a part of the solution. And that's always what I'm trying to do. I'm a problem solver by nature. So I want to be part of a solution and part of a team of people that can help be that link between the city and the citizens to help get people involved. And that's really what I would like to do and help with as part of this committee, is to help find ways to get the community involved, not just online or things like that, but actually come together in person and have these meetings and have that camaraderie between people and get people loving their city again. Because I think it's a great city. I've grown up around here all my life, both inside the city and on the outskirts. And I just want to be a part of the solution.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Dennis.
I'm going to follow Sarah and throw out my sidekick, Linda. I think she and I have been a part of the CIC for, must be almost 10 years now. And in all that time, I've sort of come to appreciate her her energy and her willingness to get in and take initiatives and participate both in the neighborhood and in the city. And there are many things that I can recount that we could touch on to call your attention to, like what she has done for the city on behalf of the city and on our neighborhood. One of the issues which is central to me is the fact that, like, when I moved to Oregon City, my neighborhood was in sort of a dysfunctional
Excuse me,
fashion.
Dennis,
Can you not hear me?
we can hear you, but your responsibility is to nominate her.
Okay, I've nominated.
Not to give her.
Okay, well, I wanted to tell her why. Okay. Okay, she'll tell you.
Well, I've lived in Oregon City for many years, and I have been very active in the community. I would like to see growth in the CIC and to grow our neighborhoods, to get people involved in our neighborhoods. I've been able to grow our little neighborhood in Kenema, and I would like to use the ideas that I have shared, with the ideas that we've used in our Kenema neighborhood, to get the other neighborhoods active and have them grow. The more people we have, the more we can do. We also need to get our group younger than what we are. So I would like to do that, to grow our neighborhood and our CIC.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations? Okay, well, thank both of you. These were not official nominations. Of course, those will happen in February, just before we vote. And just so you all know, per the bylaws, our voting will be by a raise of hands. So it's not a written voting. It's actually, you'll have to raise your hand to vote for whoever you want to. And just to let you know, I plan to, just to make it as fair as possible and not be influential, I plan to not vote during the February voting period unless there is a tie. Then I would place my vote. I just want to be as fair as possible. So I don't want to influence anybody's ideas. Okay, well, thank you both for that. Now we'll move on to the CIC representatives' autobiographies, and I thought this might be kind of an interesting little exercise, and telling us a little bit about ourselves and get to know each other a little better. So I'll start it off. I've been on the CIC now for several years, on and off. Several years, I don't know how many, but I've certainly enjoyed my time as your chair. It's been somewhat of a challenge from time to time, but very interesting. In my civilian life, I pursued two different careers. One was I was 24 years in the Oregon Army National Guard. I started by enlisting in the Oregon City National Guard unit. I lived in Southwest Portland, but I enlisted in the Oregon City Guard because my dad was a high-ranking officer in the Guard, and he told me that the Oregon City, which was up in the old armory up there, that the Oregon City unit had the best cooks. And so, of course, for the 17-and-a-half-year-old teenager, boy, why, that was pretty darn important. So that's how I ended up. After a few years, I thought, well, those officers, they get paid more and they got some pretty good benefits. So I went to officer candidate school and got my commission. And then 24-and-a-half years later, I finally decided to call it a career. In my civilian occupation, I was 49 years in the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning business. I started out with working with the tools, was able to get a good education on the mechanics of the HVAC business, and then I worked my way into management. And at that time, then I thought, well, maybe I should have stayed with working with the tools, because, you know, I had to satisfy the technicians, I had to satisfy the installers, I had to satisfy the owner of the companies that I worked for, and of all the people in the world, I still had to satisfy the customers, for crying out loud. So it got to be a bit of a challenge, but again, I reaped the benefits of it, and I would recommend that business to any young person. It's a good business to be into. It pays well, and you get a lot of satisfaction out of helping people who dearly love to see you when their furnace is not working in the wintertime. Believe me, you are a hero. I'm married 35 years to my wife, Jean. We have a little dog, Mitzi, and I describe her as the Cyndi Lauper tune of Girls Just Want to Have Fun. That's our little doggy. She does. So that pretty much covers my life. So I think we'll start with Sarah.
All right, so I was born and raised in the Seattle area, and much of my working career up there was as a graphic designer for an art glass manufacturer, stained glass. And it was a great job. Well, there were some bad things as any job, but I really liked the material that we were producing. It's for art. What can go wrong there? You know, that's fun. I love being part of the art glass industry. And so in 2016, the company that I'd spent 18 years working for told us all that they weren't going to be a company anymore. I had to figure out a plan B. And so I wasn't ready to retire, but I did have a lot of road time being put in between Seattle and Portland because I have a daughter and her husband, and at that time, just one little baby granddaughter, one little baby girl, granddaughter of mine, that I was, putting on a lot of mileage coming back and forth, as you do when you become a grandparent. You fall in love with those little things, and you just got to spend all your time with them. So at this juncture, I don't have a job to hold me up there. I'm seriously considering moving to Portland. And that Christmas, I know I had been down here visiting with, the kids and everything. And we had already talked about me moving. And so they were taking me around looking at different areas. It was Christmas time. We come into downtown Oregon City, all lit up and decorated. I fell in love. It was the most charming, adorable place. I kept saying, it's Bedford Falls from It's a Wonderful Life. And I just thought, oh, this is magic. I need to live here. And so from my last day of work was in January of 2017, and I was packing up and getting my house ready to sell, and I had all that done, and I was down here by the 4th of July. And I was moved in with the kids. Point here I have to make is I don't recommend that. If you have adult children, you do not want to move in with them. Enough said there. But so I'm down here, and I've got a pile of cash from having sold my house. What I do not have is an income stream. So when I'm house hunting, I have to rely on this pile of cash. I can't go to a bank. They're not going to lend to me because I don't have an income stream. So I'm looking at fixers because this pile of cash is pretty substantial, but houses are even more, at least the ones that have all the things that work and look good, yeah. So I'm looking for a fixer, and my son-in-law, who's brilliant at all this stuff, he's going to help me, right? So I'm feeling confident enough to do it, and I found a little place obviously in Hillendale, up on the hill there, and I bought it. I was really not sure about this project at that point because the house was a wreck. But hey, it looks pretty good now. I've been living in it, fixing it up. At least from the outside, you think I have a nice house now. So there is that. And So ironically, I have an income stream. I've been freelancing as a graphic designer, and the company that I had worked for all those years up in the Seattle area, when they decided not to be a company anymore, they sold off all their assets to a company down in California. And that's one of my biggest clients now. So I'm full circle. I'm still in the glass industry and life is good. And when COVID hit, everybody's miserable and locked up inside their houses, and I was no exception. I live alone with one dog, one cat, and I could tell you all about them, but I'm talking too much already, so we'll just go with this part. And I got a little thing in the mail from the city explaining about how we have these neighborhood associations. I didn't know that. They told me about the CIC. I thought, that sounds like a good idea. And back up in Seattle, I had been president of an HOA for 11 very long years, but two of the things from that gig that I really valued were that I got to know all the people, all my neighbors in my community, and I always knew what was going on. And I jumped all over that notice about the neighborhood associations and CIC because that was a ticket to get those things back in my life. And I've never looked back. It's been great, and I'm really happy to be here. That's my story.
Thank you, Sarah. Josh, you'll be next.
Thank you. So again, I'm Josh Kaiser. I've lived in Hillendale since 2016. However, when I was born and lived on Lawton Road over off of South End. Moved around Westland, Molalla, Sandy, mostly in Clackamas County throughout my life. Spent a lot of time in Redland, unincorporated OC. For over 20 years, I've worked for an electrical distribution company. I'm a divisional operations manager. So I travel around all over the place, get to see lots of sites in Alaska and Arizona and Texas and all over the Pacific Northwest. Meet all sorts of different people and really get to interact with a very wide variety of people. It's pretty fun. I also get to train them and try to help them to do their jobs better and all that. And it's good. For enjoyment, I like to watch sports like rodeo or ice hockey. Actually, Thursday, heading up to go see the Kraken play. That'll be fun. I also love just to be out in nature, be out in the middle of the woods, whether it be just camping or hunting and fishing or just listening to a crick and the birds and the squirrels running around and all that kind of stuff. That's my happy spot. As I had mentioned before, when I moved to Oregon City, I was kind of fascinated with the whole neighborhood association thing. And of course, had the first thought, oh, HOA, wait a minute, what? No, that's not what this is. And I got one of those little cards in the mail, and I went to my first meeting 2 months after moving into my house. It was great, and got to meet all the different people that were there, and there's a couple of them that are still around, so it's great. Then I got the opportunity at the start of this year to join the CIC with Sarah and get to hang out with all you guys. So that's been pretty awesome. I'm also joined into the Chiefs Advisory Group, and so I get to get more in touch with the police and fire departments, which is also pretty neat for me because it's something I've always been very interested in and understanding the inner workings of how those departments work and all that. So really interested in getting to know more about those community departments. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Dennis?
Let's see. 2003, I retired as a professor of junior college out in Long Island, New York, and have taught in various private, public, and community colleges for more than 20 years. And always an East Coast, West Coast kind of guy, and always seemed to find and gravitate towards creative groups. Had a business in the 80s that was, we imprinted on t-shirts and sweatshirts, had a couple stores in the city of Manhattan. And that was quite exciting with working with people on a retail level and a personal level. And and then went back into, what's fun about my vocation was like you can always pick up the Chronicle for Higher Education and look for opportunities. And as it has worked out, that's how I sort of piggyback from West Coast to East Coast. And it always seems to be more on a West Coast or an East Coast basis. Anyway, a number of years teaching, different venues. Been down in the South, taught at Savannah, Georgia. That was great for a couple of years. Was the foundation chair for that group. In the more current times now, having retired, the object was to renovate a house here in Oregon City. Like Sarah, we loved it here too on subsequent visits, and tried to figure out a way, having had a background that was sort of like always the curse of being handy with a saw and a hammer, to find some place that you could renovate and fix up. We've done that many times over the years with a number of projects. Anyway, so we did find a place in Oregon City, a beautiful little community called Kenema, and we renovated it, and I built a studio, and so my current pastime is to spend more time painting, and then for relief and exercise, I play table tennis, and it's become a passion. And so I have a number of friends in that category, and we sort of get together on a weekly basis, more often about 2 or 3 times a week, and exchange the ball. And so that's my current thing. So I'm pretty happy about that. I'm very fortunate in regards to having a full week schedule. I love my community. The caveat to how I got here was by my colleague here and her friend, who were out running around in the neighborhood about the time I had just put the house into some kind of state of like repair, and was asked if I might join a group to bring back sanity to the neighborhood, and always willing to like take on a challenge. I said yes, and that's why I'm still here at the CIC. And it's been very rewarding and rich. I've got to know a lot about the civic manifestations in the city, and the people, commissioners, and the various chairs and departments, and how, if there's anybody that has come to this area and does take on a project of renovating a house, you have to work through the process, and you right away engage with people. And I've always found it just quite encouraging, and for that I'm still very happy about the choices I made in coming to Oregon City.
I feel obligated to clarify something. You talked a lot about renovation, and you casually tossed out spending time painting.
Yes.
Would you care to elaborate on that, Dennis?
I don't know where you're leading me. So my background when I was an instructor was art and design, and painting was my love, and that's what I did as a graduate student. And so, and I've done it periodically throughout these many, many years. And so with this, obviously what's great about retirement is like if you can set out on a course to do something that you've always loved, and now you're able to do it. And so that's why I built the studio. And as often as I can, I'm always trying to make a better painting. And it's very frustrating, but it's very challenging, and I like it. And so that's also got me involved in the creative community within the Portland area. And I have numerous friends who've been both encouraging and helpful in that regard. And so I'm always constantly trying to, better my game and get a better example of a painting. If you want, if you're interested, my website, I have a website, I'm on Instagram too, adennispaints.com, and you can sort of see the kind of stuff I do. It's basically urban street scenes. So adennispaints.com, should you want to investigate that I do often. That's it. Thanks.
I would also like to mention that Dennis made a painting of our slain police officer Robert Lipke's boots. It's hanging in the police department. Very nice painting. Thank you. And he is quite an accomplished artist. He's Pretty darn good.
Thanks, Bob.
We've got a half dozen of his paintings
That's right,
hanging
Steve.
in our place.
Steve is one of my art patrons.
Okay, Linda.
Thank you. You thought I was gonna get away, huh?
And on that note, the Kenema neighborhood was the neighborhood that raised the money to bronze the boots for fallen Officer Lipke, and Dennis did the painting of that. Yeah. I'm not a native Oregonian. I am originally from Nebraska. I was born in a very small town of about 400 people, and my mother had been born in that very small town, as well as my grandmother. So why did I leave? Gosh, you know, I can relate to the entire town. But it was a great place to grow up, had great appreciation of neighbors. You always had to get along with absolutely everyone because there was no one else to go and have your friend. You had to get along with everyone. And that's what I did for years. I was a realtor. Several decades I was a realtor. I've now retired and I love doing that. I can't imagine doing anything I would have loved anymore. And that again is customer service. You're getting along with people, same people, changing the games, but it was a very fulfilling career for me. I totally love that. I moved to Oregon City in 1977, and I moved here because I loved the hill. It reminded me of San Francisco. You went up and you went up and you went up and the homes changed. And I bought a brand new home in Hillendale for, I'm not going to tell you how economical it was at the time, but it was a lovely place, and my children grew up in Hillendale. I had a lifestyle change, and I thought, well, I'm going to move to a different neighborhood, and I came to Kenema, which is as different from Hillendale as they can be. I was very lucky to get a new home. I can write checks and paint, and that's all I can do for repairs. I had limited abilities anytime to write checks, so I was over looking for the new homes. I've now retired, and a typical old person, I've just fallen in love with my little dog. I have a little Yorkie that I walk around. She's just precious, and I take her with me. We do walking, and she's also my kayak buddy. My number one kayak buddy, that I'm very fortunate to live on the Willamette River. And so anytime I decide to go kayaking, it's just, you're just there. But I don't know, Oregon City's a lovely place to live. I love Kenema. And that's about all I can think of saying.
Thank you, Linda. Steve?
Well, by trade, I was a computer analyst and did that for 35 years for primarily two companies. The electric utility in Michigan, and then for Safe Corporation in Salem. And left Michigan in 2001 and moved into Oregon on September 11th. Fortunately, our first grandson was about 3 months old, and we got to watch him instead of watching the news for a week. So, and our first house was, over by, it was a new park, but lived there for 2 years and decided that that wasn't the house we wanted to live in. I was the president of the HOA there, but moved to Park Place, where we were having another house built. And there was a brouhaha going through about the Park Place concept plan, and decided to get in on that and find out what was going on. And that was my introduction to the Park Place Neighborhood Association. So that was 2004. And our chair and her husband moved, and they asked me to take over. So I put my name in and got elected to be the chairman of the Park Place Neighborhood Association, and I've been off and on ever since then. Additionally, I was on the Urban Renewal Commission for 4 years. My wife and I formed the Service Committee and worked a lot with Jerry Herrmann on doing cleanups, on getting funding for our parks. And we have a park that nobody even knows about. It's the Straight Pioneer Cemetery. And it says that it's a park. We've got signage on it, but the city doesn't acknowledge it. So, I've done web design and technical support for the Library Foundation and the Friends of the Library. My wife and I are supporters of music and the arts and the Portland Thorns. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, maybe one more thing. So, in 2003, I met with Chris Wadsworth, who was trying to get the CIC started again. And that kind of fell through, but William Gifford and I came to the city commission in 2008 with a proposal to reform the CIC, and we did. So, and we've been here ever since.
We thank you for that, for sure. Dan, go ahead.
Hello, Tess. Well, I guess I'm a little younger than Dirt, but I started out here in the 5th grade at Berkeley Hills. Did spend a little time in the 6th grade up at Park Place many, many moons ago. I'm an amateur radio operator. I bounce radio signals off the moon. Is one of my hobbies. I did a lot of work with the USIA in satellite communications, and with CNN back, way back before anybody had satellite TV or anything. We're bringing satellite TV into Arab countries. We're doing a lot of work with our government, putting an antenna in China for receiving facilities off of the satellites around the world. We built some radio stations for third world countries for our government, and put them in containers and took them over and installed them. We've been in a lot of countries where you're running around in cars with the bulletproof doors, and you're running out in the country, and we just installed a satellite dish, which they just put the country on communications for our military back. It was getting abandoned and discarded, and sit here and said, hey, I'd like to pull over to the side of the road here and take a look here, and little tilt on the side road. We opened up the door, and the door almost tore my arm off. And geez, it's probably 1,000-pound door for being bulletproof. We were around a lot of areas where there's a lot of conflict, and we were doing a lot of communications for our government, for the Navy and so forth. I've done a lot of construction in Oregon City. I named it as one of my subdivisions after my son, Christopher. Got a street named after us as Berg, and we used to manufacture these satellite antennas. We had 130 employees, and we had over 1,000 employees that backed up supplying us with parts and built parts for us to reassemble. And really have done a lot more, but that's about a simple thing that I can come across to pass along without spending hours telling you different things I've done.
Thank you, Dan. Will?
I feel like I have a little bit in common with everybody, but I was born in Holland, raised in Southern Africa. My dad was a mining engineer, so we moved, I can't tell you how many times. So I'm from everywhere and nowhere. I am a Canadian citizen as well as being an American now. We lived in Beaverton for about 25 years, raised our 3 daughters there. I was trained as a mining engineer and stupidly fell in love with a physicist, which means that I was stuck in a city. So when we moved, he was in graduate school, we moved to the United States, and I didn't get a green card for about 9 years. It took us a very, very long time to get a green card. So being the rule follower that I am, I didn't work under the table, and I didn't, so I kind of lost my career, and basically spent a lot of time volunteering at schools. I feel very passionately about children and getting them involved in all kinds of things, especially nature. I had to laugh. I work at the BLM every summer as a volunteer ranger there on the coast. So we moved to Texas in 2016, which was a very painful thing for me after being in beautiful Oregon for 25 years, and I truly consider Oregon home. After COVID, or during COVID, I just looked at Kevin one day because my stints on the coast, they started, it was my way to get out of Texas. I got a tiny little trailer and my giant dog. Unlike you guys, I tend to go for the big ones. And I lived in a little tab trailer with my 100-pound dog for, several months, volunteering at the coast. And that period kept getting longer and longer and longer. So when it hit 5 months, I thought maybe it was time to head back. And during COVID, I was gonna come back here and look for a house. And our friends put the Bush house up on the market. They had resurrected this old house. I think it was almost about to be condemned. It was so bad. They had some true vision. And they put it up on Facebook one day, and I just went, wait a minute, I'm flicking through this page. And we've always lived in brand new houses, and I fell in love with this house. And I knew very little about Oregon City other than our youngest daughter, was a French horn player, and we would take her up for lessons up into Hillendale. I think that's where Larry lives. Her teacher lived there. And so I knew where Wally's Music was, and that's all I remember because it was when the bridge was closed, so we always took the long loopy way around. So we bought this house over the internet because it was COVID, we weren't flying anywhere. And we've been fixing it up ever since. And as soon as we moved here in 21, I joined, I think, one of the very first neighborhood meetings. I just want to be part of the community. They're going to drag me out of that house in a box. I have no desire to move, so I want to be part of the community. I want it to make a better place. And then I think as part of our MNA, the neighborhood, they were short of CIC people, so here I am. And I feel a lot like a lot of you. We just want to make it a better place. I really want a sense of community. I think it's really important, especially nowadays where we're all stuck behind our screens, we're all stuck behind our doors. I see more and more younger people being scared to let their children out. And I'm like, nope, children should be running around the neighborhood and they should feel safe to do so. And that's what so that's me.
I want to hear more about the dog.
We have a Bernese Mountain Dog now. That is the biggest dog that I have. No, not quite the biggest dog. He's almost the biggest dog I've ever had, but he is absolutely the most stubborn. So you will see me walking him twice a day, every day through this area. If you see a large, big black blob in the middle of the street because he has decided he's not moving, that's me. And then we have a little retriever, who's only 80 pounds. But we're usually stuck in front of the hive where he just basically sits and watches everybody, hoping that he's going to be allowed into the restaurant. So.
Well, I appreciate your description of living in a small little home.
I love it. It's interesting.
Well, I mean, when you were living at that, We lived in one for 10 months in our travel trailer. We were waiting for our property to be developed here in Oregon City. And it kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
I don't know if I could do it with my husband. Like, he comes and visits, and I'm like, oh, but honestly, it makes you appreciate, you know, I do it every summer. I have expanded. Instead of a 12-foot trailer, I'm now in a 17-foot trailer. But, yeah.
We were in a 19-footer, and it was 12 feet by the time we got our.
Oh, yeah. Well, one with two people, it's much more difficult.
Okay, Denise.
So I was born at the Oregon City Hospital, the old pink one. So was my husband. We didn't know each other then until we met on a bus. We met on a 4-H trip to Utah. Kids from Clackamas County went to Utah for a week, and that's where we met. Started dating a couple years later, and it was all over. But he grew up in the Park Place neighborhood, school on Clackamas River Drive. So we moved around a bit and ended up in the Park Place neighborhood. We lived there for 26 years and then moved to the McLaughlin neighborhood in 2017. And just love it there, love the house. It was built by a German family, and I think that my relatives probably knew them. It was built in 1892, and my mother's grandfather moved to Willamette in the mid-1800s and had a sawmill there, and they were also from Germany, so I think they probably knew each other. So it's kind of a cool connection. So when I was 6 weeks old, my dad worked for the Forest Service, and we moved to Alaska. My grandmother wasn't very happy with him. It wasn't a state yet until 2 years later. And then we moved to Reedsport, Oregon, on the coast. And then we moved to Sandy, Oregon. I graduated from Sandy High School also. So my parents still live there. We have 3 boys and 4 grandchildren. And some of the activities that we have had a lot of fun with included Highland Broadsword. So if you ever see me with a stick, I know how to use it. And we got involved with the Highland clans and did a lot of work with them. And so we were clan conveners at the Highland Games, Portland Games, and a couple other games, and helped teach Highland Broadsword at the games. What else? Oh, my career, my real job was a microbiologist at Kaiser Regional Lab and then at Clinical Microbiology Institute in Wilsonville. And I retired in 2020, and I'm very happy to be retired and enjoying the neighborhood.
Dee Dee, it's your turn.
Hi, hi. My name is Dee Dee Dolstrid. I was originally from a small town in Northern California, and directly after college, my husband and I jumped in our van with our 2 big giant dogs and moved to Oregon. And the first place we moved was Sheridan, but we found a place to rent in Oregon City because we were living out of our van, and it was November and really cold. And it was on Pearl Street, our first rental, until I found a house 1.5 block away on Dewey Street. That's where I live to this day. I started off in the medical field when I was up in here out of college. And then in '83, started my own business called Cutters. It was an outlet store for clothing, salvage and overruns, seasonal change. And I did that successfully downtown Portland on 2nd and Ashton 2nd. So I was an Old Town girl. for 18 years. Then, during that time, I met a couple of people and we founded a manufacturing company of artistic glass called Glass Alchemy. So, you guys, we have all so many things in common. And so I did all the sales and marketing and branding for Glass Alchemy for about 7 years. And then I was courted by 3 magazines owned by the same editor. That was in Artistic Glass magazine internationally. And so I handled content, sales, marketing, and advertisement with them for another duration, about another 12 years. And then I was coming close up onto retirement. My mother was getting dementia. She moved in with me and actually hit the road with me for a while. I did 18 trade shows a year. So I was getting a lot of air miles in. And then when it was just no longer able for her to go with me, I stayed home until her time had passed. I worked for 2 more years and then I retired during 2020, right after COVID started. In the meantime, I got very active into our politics in our city. Originally back in the 80s when I had little children and we had burn plant coming in. And so there was a group of about 7 to 12 of us that were instrumental in stopping the burn plant that is now our recycle center. However, they did clear a bird flyway there. I've been involved with Jerry Herrmann in a bajillion projects in our town. He keeps you active, like it or not. He just pulls you into an event and you just are helping. I've been on the NRC for a few years. My biggest compliment is when Doug Neely told me, every group's got to have an activist on the group. And that was the biggest compliment I ever had. I think that's a compliment too. I've been with the CIC, very active in the Eddyville neighborhood. Before it was Berkeley Hills and when it was originally Eddyville neighborhood. So I've been in Oregon City a long time, raised 3 sons here, very active at Eastham School, Holcomb School, and Old Ogden, which is now Tumwater. And then the high schools. One of my children went to school in downtown Portland because I worked down there and it was a brand new middle school that was starting a new set of charter schools. And then he came back to high school in Oregon City. So I'm retired. I travel a heck of a lot. Also having body part replacements. So I'm here and then I'm gone, here and gone, but I sure appreciate Zoom and Bluetooth so I can stay in touch. I am very, very active in the Heritage Tree Program in our city. I'm going to nominate Straight Park? Is that the one in Park Place? Stratton Park.
Straight.
Anyway, I'm going to
It's
nominate
Straight
that
Pioneer
park.
Cemetery.
There you go. I even have pictures. I just haven't measured the trees. But I'm going to make a point of getting that done by next year. I was on my list for this year. But I'm also changing my focus, which has always been sitting our urban canopy as much as we possibly can, to try to do a little bit more climate action plans for our city. I'm focusing because we are neglecting that area, and it's forever being put on the bottom of our city goal list if it's not striped off. It was striped off for 22, 23. But anyway, so I'm hoping to stay on the CIC. I'll probably, hopefully come back if I'm quit traveling so much and join a couple of others. Hopefully Prac would take me. And then I always love the NRC. It is really a really good group of people. Try to be active in our politics as much as I can. And that's kind of me in a nutshell. Oh, and other than I'm on Facebook and chit chat. We all know how poorly I type and never go back and read my messages until I get called out on my bad spelling, punctuation, and or the wrong word. But anyway, yeah, Oregon City's my town. Been my town since 1975, and I will not leave this town unless I die somewhere else. And hopefully that's on the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Jared, your turn.
I was originally born in Arizona, was there for the first 29 years of my life. Wanted to get out of there. People ask why I wanted to move. I said there's 120 reasons why I had to move, and they were all degrees. Finally made it up to Oregon in 2013, where I started working with Clackamas County in their tourism office, handling marketing and communications. Did that for almost 10 years, minus a break because of COVID. Did my own marketing agency, then went back to the county for a year, then started here. It'll have been a year in 2 weeks. I'll have been with the city for a year. I know time flies when you're all having fun. I've been married to my wife, Cindy, for 22 years. We were high school sweethearts, second generation high school sweethearts. My 19-year-old daughter is making the third generation. Her and her fiance are engaged and be getting married in 2025. I have a 10-year-old son who's about to be 11 next week, and we have a freaking zoo at our house. I have two very large dogs, a lab and a Malamute. And then my daughter, who is going to college for zoology, works at a pet shop. So I now have 2 axolotls, 2 ferrets, and she has 6 reptiles. So we've got 3 leopard geckos, an African fat-tailed gecko, a blue-tongued skink, and a black and white Argentinian tegu, which is basically a small dinosaur. So when you walk into my house, you hear the Jurassic Park theme. It's great. But we love Oregon, and I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. I was always fascinated by the Pacific Northwest, growing up in an area that is brown and dry, and Oregon's the complete opposite. And I can't imagine being anywhere else. I get east of the Cascades, I'm kind of like, ugh. So this is home, and I can't imagine being anywhere else.
Thank you. Adam.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate this opportunity. I've been coming to these meetings for a while now, but I appreciate the opportunity to hear more about your personal lives beyond this room. And so my family has roots in Oregon City beginning in the 40s. My maternal great-grandparents purchased a berry farm on the property that is now the Bottle Drop. And so that's when my family came to Oregon City. I was not born here. I was born in South Korea, and then I was adopted when I was 6 months old. And so I touched down at PDX and went immediately to my childhood home, which was in the Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association. In my later years, our family moved to the Rivercrest Neighborhood Association, and now living on my own, I live in the McLaughlin neighborhood. And so this is the community that I've always called home. I graduated from Oregon City High School in 2018, and then went off to college at Willamette University, where I studied political science and communications. Many of you know me, and the reason why I initially got involved in local government was because I was the campaign manager for our 2020 recall against the mayor. That was a very interesting time for us, and I'm really proud of what our community got together to do. That was just such a great foray into that, and that was never meant as a way for me to get into elected office myself. My background professionally is in campaigns, and so I would much rather prefer to be the person getting that person elected and getting paid to do it. And when I'm not doing campaign stuff, I have been working in the legislature. I'm entering my 5th session working in the legislature. I just accepted a new position as a policy analyst, where I'm going to be focusing on education and transportation issues, which transportation specifically, many of you know that tolling has been my thing that I try to keep on top of for our city commission. And so being able to be a stakeholder at the table at the state level, I think is going to be a great opportunity. But I was appointed to fill a vacancy after we recalled our mayor and elected a new mayor who was one of the current city commissioners at the time. Bob, that's where I first met Bob, because he was one of the applicants, and every day that goes by, I wonder why I didn't just let him take the job himself. And I originally took it because while I was doing the recall, there were several serious flaws in our local government that I saw that I wanted to get fixed. And so I spearheaded a couple of charter amendments that passed with voter approval that were big priorities for me. And then the third big priority I had was creating the Youth Advisory Commission. Being in elected office as a young person is something I don't take lightly, and it's something that I want to encourage other people to be looking into. And so we created that, and with that was the creation of the Community Engagement Specialist position. And so I was very excited to get that, but I ended up running after originally saying I wasn't going to run because there were one or two voices who were preventing the Youth Advisory Commission from becoming a reality. And so you can thank them for the fact that I'm still here, because I wanted to see that through. We were finally able to get that up and running earlier this year. And I'm very proud of the work they've been able to do. And so looking ahead, my big priorities are continuing to push back against tolling, making sure we have regional solutions to our homelessness problem, and making sure that it's not just Oregon City that bears the brunt of this region-wide and statewide issue, which is something that we have been doing, but our other neighbors need to be picking up the slack. And then continuing to make sure that we invest in public safety and make sure that our community is safe to live in. And so, as you can tell from my background, community engagement is important to me. That's why I wanted to be the liaison to the CIC. And it's just always a pleasure to hear your voices, relay that back to the commission, as well as providing the commission's perspective on things going on here. So always happy to be here, and thank you.
Well, just so you know, you can thank me directly for you being on the city commission, and I'll tell you why. In 2014, I ran for mayor, and Dan Holliday was my opponent. Had the people at the time made the right choice, Dan Holliday would never have been the mayor, and you would not have had to head up the recall, and therefore you would never have been on the city commission. So you can thank me for that.
Well, I thank you. And when I was originally just serving in my appointed term, my colleagues would poke fun that I got there the easy way, which is the appointment process. And I reminded them that I still had to run a campaign too to get to the city commission. It was just a recall campaign that was 10 times harder than a regular campaign.
Just remind them you're really good at it, so they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was a very interesting exercise. Glad we did that. That was kind of fun. I thought it might be, and very informative. I'm going to skip the roundtable tonight. We've all talked enough, I think.
Yay!
Does staff liaison have any updates for us?
Yes, we do. I'm gonna let Jared start off with the utility bill.
Really?
Service. Yep. And then I'm gonna jump in with everything else.
Yeah, the utility bill did go out. I confirmed that. If you saw on your budget sheet, it was a little more than I anticipated. Thank you to that ever growing trend of inflation, making everything get more expensive. But I've already seen a couple new additions on some of the subscription lists, so I think hopefully we'll get some more attention through that. We'll kind of monitor how that goes and see how that works, and we'll look at if we want to maybe in another 6 months or a year do something similar or whatnot again.
Awesome. Are there any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to slide into all of the different topics that I get to update you on. The first are the CIC renewals. Everyone here is up for their CIC renewals. Bob talked about your new candidates that will be chosen for your chair and your vice chair here at the CIC, but everybody here needs to also renew their membership. The city of Oregon is pushing to have everybody do their renewals for all the different committees by January, but I understand that the CIC has a certain process to be able to be a candidate for the CIC So with that being said, the city is asking that you as the CIC and then each individual neighborhood associations try and get your nominations in for your CIC candidates as soon as possible. That way, the mayor can be able to appoint you. Applications for your CIC renewals are also online. I'd be more than happy to email you all of this information as well, but I just wanted to touch base that everybody needs to renew their CIC membership. Are there any questions on that?
Are there are there limitations as to how long you're allowed to be on the CIC or?
Not if you're a member, from my understanding.
Yeah,
Correct me.
there is no limit on how many years you can be a member of the CIC. The only term limits are for the chair and vice chair.
Okay. And everyone's term is for 2 years once you renew, but every CIC renewal has been happening on an even year. So since we're going into the year 2024, that's when CIC renewals are going to happen. Okay. I want to emphasize too that if you apply online and there isn't a recommendation sent by your neighborhood association, you cannot be selected. So make sure that the neighborhood association does send a official nomination to me. It can also be to Jacob, but I would prefer it to be sent to me. That way I can handle that and then forward on information to our city recorder.
I might just suggest that be in the form of a copy of your minutes where you were nominated.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Bob. Updating the website. Everyone should have received an email from me. I'm in the process and working with Jared to be able to update all of the neighborhood associations information on the website. I know that there has been some misinformation on the website and there needs to be some updating. So if I sent you that email and you haven't replied, I would appreciate your reply, just to make sure that all of the information that we have on the website is up to date. That would be awesome. I've heard back from a couple of you already, so thank you for that.
And just to say that information will also be used in the next issue of Trail News. So it's kind of a double whammy there. It's really important to get that information to us so we can make sure it's accurate as quickly as possible.
I successfully, Dan, held a meeting using the Zoom account, the city Zoom account, so that is up and available for you to be able to use. We didn't run into any complications, but I am assuming that in the future, when multiple people are trying to log in from different networks, that there might be an authentication process that has to happen moving forward. In that case, what's going to happen is you're going to log into the Zoom account. It's going to ask for an authentication code that will be sent to my work phone. So you're going to have to coordinate. It can be an hour before your meeting to log on. That way I'm available to be able to give you that access code. That way you're able to log on to Zoom. So if you're planning to use the Zoom account for any future neighborhood association meetings, I would encourage you to contact me and then we can schedule a test to make sure how it goes. And then contact me about an hour before the meeting just so we can make sure that everything runs smoothly for you. Another thing, Dan, we talked about during your meeting that you had people in the waiting room on your meeting for the Zoom link that I created for you. And you asked that in the future that be removed. The risk with that, removing, having a link that anybody is accessible to, you raise the risk for Zoom bombing, which means that anybody who has that link can just automatically be able to be entered, and then they can mess with your meeting. So that's something that you just need to know all moving forward, the pros and the cons of that. There's also going to be an open house on December 11th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. The location is still under discussion. It's either going to be at the library or here at City Hall, and it's going to be an open house for the assistant city manager candidate. So that's something that I wanted to make sure that you all knew about to put on your calendar. I'll be sure to send you an email as soon as I have confirmation of the exact location as well.
Well, what's the meeting about on the assistant manager?
This is an open house. So it's an open house for the public to be able to come in and get to meet the top 3 candidates for the assistant city manager. It's going to be a very casual affair, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, I had my training for the AV setup for CIC committee meetings, and I want to be reminded myself that we have panic buttons and to not hit the panic buttons. So that's all for staff liaison updates.
Unless you want a visit from a very nice police officer.
Do
You
know
won't be
that
the
happened
first person
here
to have
tonight?
done that.
I did know that happened.
Okay, let's see,
What time was the meeting?
that should do it. Does anybody else have anything that they want to
Hannah,
bring up?
sorry, what time is the meeting on the 11th? The open house. The open house?
The open house is from 4 to 6. So interviews are going to be happening earlier that day, and then the candidates, however, sequence they get interviewed in, they'll head back either to City Hall or to the library. We're trying to still decide the location because we also have a YAC meeting, the Youth Advisory Commission meeting that night as well. This is an opportunity for you to be able to meet the assistant city manager and kind of give your insight. So you won't be able to persuade necessarily to the decision, but it's your opportunity to be able to meet those candidates. Yeah.
Okay, well, happy holidays, everybody.
Do we need to approve minutes from last meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. And I'll make a
Minutes of
motion.
November 6th, 2023.
I second that.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise their hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Did I miss anything else?
One thing maybe, January 1st, Monday, is January 1st.
Yes, no CIC meeting in January. Our next meeting will be in February, the first Monday in February. And we'll have nominations and elections for the officers, chair, vice chair, and secretary. This meeting is adjourned.